All right, guys. So thank you for coming to senior year prep on Wednesdays at 1:30. I was kind of holding my breath. I didn't know who was coming and who wasn't. So if there's anybody else that's supposed to be here, send out some notification. And so we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. Not sure if I'm gonna be able to pack it in 30 minutes, but I will try my best. And so, as you saw the title, today we're going to talk about financial aid, but we're actually going to talk about some financial aid stuff that people don't tell you. It's kind of like breaking news, hot off the press type of stuff, right? Little secrets, little stuff, right? And so, one of the things that I want, what we've been talking about, is you guys getting a head start, right, on the college planning process. So some of you guys have been doing a great job working with Miss Sai on your essays and working with Miss Sai on your college list. And the reason why we're doing that is so you won't have to work so much on it in the fall, so that you can spend more time actually, working on your scholarship applications actually, and just putting more quality time into the small list of schools that you are applying to. And so one of the things that I'm going through now, and probably in the last 30 days, is just a lot of stressed out and hard conversations with seniors and their parents, because they're getting their financial aid letters back right now. And they're seeing these huge gaps of money that are left in their packages. And we've talked about these little gaps before. And so what the gaps are basically, they're going to tell you what your bill is. Then they're going to tell you how much gift aid you receive, which are grants and scholarships, is money you don't have to pay back. And then they're going to offer you some loans. And then subtracting the scholarships and grants, whatever balance is left over is your gap that you have to make up. And so sometimes they'll offer you some loans, and sometimes not. And so people are finding that their gaps are really big, especially for your parents that make a little bit more than others. And so we have students that are at the top of the class, who are owing all this money. And so you guys, have been told that if you do good in school, you're going to get all these scholarships. Well, you are going to get some scholarships, but we got to be a little bit more strategic. So I've been doing a lot of reading, watching a lot of webinars to try to find some more monies for you guys to get a competitive advantage. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you about a couple of things today to get an advantage. So the very first thing that I'm going to talk to you guys about is raise.me. And so Miss Sai is going to put that link in the chat. And I think, have we talked about raise.me in here before?
No,
I think we did. Somebody can unmute themselves and tell me yes or no.
I honestly don't know. I've heard of it, but I don't know if it's from this or from other places.
Okay. So raise.me is a micro scholarship. And it is a scholarship that you can start filling out in 9th grade. You put in your activities, clubs, activities, leadership positions, classes that you have, the grades in your class, if it's honors, if it's AP, and you get points for those things. So some students think that it's a wasted exercise, or they think it's a scam, or they think that they're not going to get it. So we have Haja here, and Haja is a senior, and she received the Raise.me scholarship, and some of her other friends did as well. So Haja, can you talk to them a little bit about the Raise.me program?
Yeah, it's honestly not too difficult, because when they first want you to enter in information, you can probably look back in your home access account, and then I think it was the grades, and then go to transcript and just fill out all that information in there. They do there isn't like one way to fill out the information. There is ways to like adjust it, because if you don't know what you got for your like mid marks of freshman year, you can just change it to be like, oh, I only know my final year grade. But for everything you update, they're gonna give you like a little notification like, oh, you earned $500 from this college, you earned 600 from whatever. And it's kind of like nice to see. There's also like colleges you can add to your list too, and you can order them in priority or something, but they always have like a little amount next to their names as to how much micro scholarships you got from them. So you can always keep track of that. And then when you do apply to colleges, I think they kind of look for your name on raise.me. So when they email you back, not email you, mail you back with like, oh, here's a list of scholarships you got. And then they're like, oh, we've received your raise.me guy. So here, there's more money for you.
How much did
Okay.
you get?
I got like 14,000
Spread out over.
for Penn Abington, and they're separating it into like 1,000 per semester, I think. So it doesn't come in one go. They separate it by semesters, but still, it's a nice amount.
Yeah, and there's some students that receive, a couple of students in our school, they got $4,000 a year from raise.me just for filling out the thing. So this money is legit. It comes from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and a whole bunch of other businesses and corporations that, you know, put some money together, and they're just been giving it out to students. And like Haja said, it's really easy to fill out. And you know, every school does not participate in it, but that could make the difference for a lot of you to put that on there. So you want to make sure you put your school list on in the beginning. So I know Haja has to go. That's why we have her going first. So does anybody have any questions about raise.me for Haja? I guess it must be self-explanatory. Let me just look in the chat and see if anybody dropped anything in there. Nope. All right. So if we have time at the end, we'll go to the site, but I want to make sure that I don't spend too much time talking about it. All right. So thank you, Haja, so much for coming. Of course, you can stay if you want to, but I'm sure you have other senior things to do. All right.
That was loud. Okay, yeah, goodbye. Have a nice day.
All right. Thank you, darling.
Thank you.
All right.
No problem.
You know, so just that's one of the easiest ways for you guys to get money. And most of you who are in here, you know, your grades are high. Most of you have honors classes. Most of you have AP classes. So that's just money that you're going to get. All right. So the next thing that we want to talk about is the net price calculator. Okay. And so Ms. Sai is going to put in a link for the net price calculator. And I'm going to share my screen and show you a little bit about that. This is something that I would like you guys to do. And if we have some time, we may just spend one session just going over this period. So she just put this link in the chat for you guys. So one of the problems or the main problem that families have is that nobody really has an idea of how much money they're going to get. They wait for these letters to come between January and March, and they're totally freak out because they see that they weren't eligible for grants from the federal government. But there's a way for you guys to kind of go in ahead of time and kind of get an estimate of at least if you're going to be eligible for any grants or loans from the federal government. So what you're going to do is you're going to either type in the name of a school that you're interested in, or you can simply Google net price calculator for Susquehanna University. By law, this happened under the Obama administration. Every college has to have their net price calculator on their website. Now, some of them make it very hard to find. Not saying that they do it purposely, but it's hard to find. So don't go to the website clicking around, just Google it, or you can just type it in here. So what's going to happen is when you type in some information, it's going to ask you the same kind of information that will be asked if you do a FAFSA, which is your free application for federal student aid. They're going to ask you questions like, your parents' income, how many of you guys are, you know, in, how many people live in your house? Do you have a job? How much are you making? Are there any savings? So they're not going to ask you every question on the FAFSA, but just the key questions. You know, are you a student that is a foster child or adopted? And so they'll come up with some kind of formula which will put together what's called an EFC number, or an expected family contribution number. And so that number, and we'll talk about that in much more detail later, but the expected family contribution is a number that the college feels that your parent or guardian or your family can pay towards college. So most people, when they see that number, they laugh, because that number for some people is very big, right? But at least if you can go in ahead of time and see what your EFC number is, it will tell you if you are eligible for grants. So then that way, if you're not eligible for grants, at least you know now. And that means that you really need to take more seriously looking for scholarships, which you should be looking for scholarships anyway. All right. So I know I said a mouthful. So does anybody have any questions or any comments about that before I keep going? You probably have to unmute yourself because I can't see the chat. So I know some of you don't want to have any conversations with your parents about money, parent or guardian about money, because one, they're probably going to tell you it's none of your business, right? Or they're just not going to answer you at all. But there's some conversations that you guys need to start having with your families ahead of time about budgeting. Maybe so ask them, how much money do we have per month, to pay towards my education? That might be a nice way to ask, because you want to know. You don't want to be disappointed that you find out that the school that you really want to go to, after your family sits there and crunches those numbers, it may not be a place that you guys can afford to go. Because sometimes your parents, they want the best for you. And back in the old days when I went to school, it was still kind of affordable for you to go. And when my parents' age, they could actually work their way through school, right? It was nowhere close to the amount that it is now. And so some of your parents will say, you've been doing the work, don't worry about it, I'm just going to make it happen. And sometimes it doesn't happen. And it's very stressful. So those conversations need to happen. So if you are uncomfortable with having that conversation, or if you have a crazy mom like me who will say none of your business and go back to your room, then say, hey, why don't we have a conversation with Miss Mitchell to kind of start getting ready for college and see, what we can do to pay for college. And then I'll have the conversation for you, whether you're there or whether you're not there. But it's very important for you guys to have that conversation now. Okay. So does anybody have any questions? Y'all are so quiet. Eerily quiet. Like scary movie quiet. Like Friday.
I have one question.
Thank you, Madeline. Thank you.
For the rate, so I know like when you apply to colleges, or like when you apply for financial aid, a lot of times it'll ask about like what you already have. Does like for the Raise Me, would that count like against you? Because I know like sometimes if you already have some scholarships, like maybe they'd, or maybe not scholarships, but if you already have like some sort of like money saved up, then they'd offer you less. Would the Raise Me count against that or not?
I don't think so, because the Raise.me, they have relationships with the colleges. So
Okay.
every college doesn't do Raise.me. So they, I don't think so.
Okay.
So you can double check that, but I don't really think so. You go ahead and do it anyway. Because again, some of these people are getting $4,000 or $5,000 a year. And some of the gaps that you guys have, the average that I'm seeing is like $10,000, $15,000. So if you can knock off $4,000 or $5,000 with that, and it comes every year, that can make the difference between you going to your first, second, or third choice school. Okay. So I really would like you guys, and I'm very, very serious about this. Miss Sai and I have spoken about this a lot, to talk to your families about doing the net price calculator. So for your parents who don't want you in their business, just give them the link and ask them to do it. Just say, I want to make sure that the schools that I'm putting on my list, we can afford. All right. All right. So now I'm going to go to the next part. So when you guys are, and let me share my screen again. In fact, let me give you this link too. How about that? So you guys can have it. Mm, 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 mm. All right, I'm going to drop this link in the chat. This is the document that I'm using right now. It's kind of fluid. This is a little experiment here. All right. So everything that I'm talking about today is actually on this sheet. Miss Sai, tell Miss Sai thank you. She put this together for you guys. Some of you guys want to look at your schools this way. Schools are set up as either needs-based or merit-based scholarships. So if your family has a lower to medium income, meaning that it might be your family income may be $40,000 a year or less, then you need to be applying to more needs-based colleges because they're going to give you more money, especially if your grades are good. They're going to give you a lot of money to close that gap for you. If your parents make like 60 or 80, $1,000 or above, I mean, that 65 to 80,000 is kind of in that little cutoff area, but definitely if you're $100,000 or above, you need to be applying more to merit-based scholarship schools. And if you can look and find out, where those are. We're going to talk about that later. But here are a couple of websites that you guys can read more information about needs-based versus merit-based, and it can give you some links. So basically it says, if you are applying for college financial aid, then you may be wondering what the differences are between the two. The primary difference between these two types of financial aid is that merit-based scholarships, unlike need-based financial aid, are awarded to students based on academic or other merit rather than demonstrated financial need. Happily, for many students, your parents' salaries typically have no bearing on your eligibility for merit-based aid. In addition, while need-based financial aid can take many forms, such as grants, scholarships, work study, and loans, and merit-based financial aid is typically only awarded in the form of grants and scholarships. Now, there are some students that can get need-based scholarships based off of a combination of merit as well. So those are some schools that do that. So that's just another strategy when you're putting your list together. And again, I will go into this in more detail on other weeks that we meet. Okay. So does anybody have any questions so far? Again, you're going to have to unmute yourself. All right, so what I'm going to do is stop sharing my screen. And if Miss Sai can share some information about rankings.
Hello, give me 1 second to pull my PowerPoint up. So I think there's so many colleges in the United States, it's hard to begin where to start. Ms. Mitchell and I sometimes compare it to like car shopping. There's so many models, there's so many brands. Which one is the best one? Well, the answer is there isn't really a best one. There's one that's a good fit for you. So I know rankings, I think in our generation, in our world, is very tempting to want to rank everything and decide who's the best. And I think that can cause a lot of stress and a lot of pressure that probably isn't healthy and maybe like wouldn't get you to make the best decisions. So when I was in high school, how I decided if a school was a good one was I would type in the name of the school in Google and I would type in ranking. And the first thing that would pop up would be a website from US News. And I was like, there we go. That's what it is. Well, first of all, US News pops up first, not because they're the best, but because they pay the most money to put them up there first. And by having Google put them up there first, people just click into it more, and thus they stay on top. And also, just thinking about it, I think I learned this too late, so I wanted to share it with y'all early, was US News is a company, and companies need business. So US News publishes a ranking every single year. If they publish the same thing every single year, no one's going to want to read or buy whatever it is they're selling. So somehow, some way, they got to change their formula so that schools move a little bit up here and down here. But does the school really change just because they drop from 18 to 19, 100 to 101? Not really. It's all about marketing and getting you to want to visit their website. So I actually looked into how schools are ranked, and I copied this from one of the websites, and I think I was very surprised because a lot of it has nothing to do with school. So for the ranking, this is basically for US News how they rank their schools. Academic reputation takes up a really big part of it, 22%. And academic reputation, it just means what people think of it. And it's easy to keep your reputation high if it's already out there. So
Can
it's
you put
not
that back to the front? Yeah, thank you. And can you make it a little bit bigger?
Yes, actually, I'll just do this. Okay. Is this better? Yeah? Oh, okay. Sorry, I couldn't see you. Academic reputation. Retention, I would say, yes, it is important. You want to be able to see people graduate because there are some schools where they're not providing people with enough classes, enough slots per class. But if the graduation retention rate that you see from a school is about 60%, and you know you're a hardworking person and you will take all the classes and finish those classes, you're okay. That's not going to make a difference. But what I thought was interesting was student selectivity plays 12.5%. So I saw this TED Talk about how colleges play hard to get. And usually the harder it is to get something, the more prestigious some people think it is. However, they're like college selectivity. So do you think a school is better because they rejected 9 of your 10 friends versus if they rejected 1 of your 10 friends? Or for like Brown University this year, they got so many applications because they went test optional and everybody was like, I'm going to shoot my shot at an Ivy League. So all of a sudden, Brown University didn't do anything. They just got a lot more applications because everybody thought they would shoot their shot because they were test optional. And all the schools in the US went top test optional. So ask yourself, does it really matter to me? Is the school better for me because they rejected a bunch of other kids? And also, alumni giving plays a difference. Does that really, super matter to you? How much money that alumni are giving to the school? And also, for example, faculty resources. Yes, an important part of it is how many kids are in one class, which some people prefer. Like, I don't want anybody to talk to me. I just want to blend in with 200 kids and sit in the back. Or some people want 10 to 1. But even if you are in the 10 to 1 school, you have 10 kids per 1 professor. There's some students who would still never talk to a professor, never raise their hand in class, never question, never go to office hours. But even if you're in a school with 150 kids per professor, there's some students who go out of their way to ask questions, to go to office hours, to talk to their professors about getting career advice. So it's what you make of it that makes a difference. So my ultimate message is don't let a single number on a single website drive you crazy, and don't let anyone else do that to you. And then a quote that I shared with my group just now was, everybody's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. So finding a school that values you and what you bring to the table, because you want to find a place that you feel valued in, and that's really important. So one thing I actually did was when I got my acceptances back, I went on US News and I was like, blah, 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 ranking, and I made a list. And the school that I thought about going to was higher than the school I ended up going to, but they didn't even have the major I wanted. And all I wanted to be was an elementary school teacher. So at some point I was like, so because they are 3 above in US News, I'm going to go there and study something that I don't care about, with a bigger class size that I don't think I would do well in. No. So it's just very tempting to give into that like name brand and ranking. So for example, with cars, if you go shopping, chances are most of the cars on the market work fine. A lot of people want that Jaguar and want that BMW. Is it really because it's such a more fabulous car, safer car. It's just about the name. And so I think just rethinking what that means to you and not letting it drive all your decision making. So that's my little spiel.
Well, thank you, Miss Sign. I asked her to talk to you guys about that because we had a meeting with another group earlier, and it kind of related a lot to what we're talking about. So how does that relate to money? It has a lot to do with money, because those schools that you may look at that are those brand names that you're chasing after, you may be looking over other schools that are very, very good schools, but they're not on those rankings, and you're paying $5, $10, $20, $30,000 more in tuition because of that, right? So I want to go back to this little sheet. And I know some of you guys have to go at 1 o'clock. So if you have to go, I totally understand. This is being recorded, and I'll make sure that you guys get access to it. But I wanted to make sure that I did all this in one shot. All right. So I have this, this form that you guys have. Ms. Sai put together a couple of the most common ranking sheets on here. So you have the newest U.S. News college ranking. That's the most popular one. But all four of these kind of measure schools in different ways. So new U.S. News and World Reports is the one that is the most college ranking driven, as far as people trying to do things to manipulate the stats. The Princeton Review provides information on college rankings in different categories as far as demographics, academics, extracurricular. Niche provides reviews from current students and alumni about the school in addition to school rankings. Forbes has a list. Forbes emphasizes the student outcomes from colleges to determine its rankings, meaning when people graduate from that school, how long does it take them to graduate? What kind of jobs do they get? What kind of salaries do they make? Over 5, 10, 15, 20 years, what is their lifestyle like? So all four of those use different rankings. So you want to look at them for different lenses. So now back to the money part. Before I go on, does anybody have any questions or comments about the rankings? And you have to unmute yourself.
That doc that you're showing, I don't have access to it.
Okay, I thought you did. So let me see what I did wrong.
And I also have another meeting to go to.
Okay, so just, you'll get the recording.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it that way. Hold on, you want the link? Okay. All right, guys, tell me if you can open it now. You should be able to open it now. Can you guys open it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. So selectivity. This is the most important thing after the net price calculator that I want you to remember from today. When you guys start putting your list together, there are all different types of schools. So you guys just hear names of schools, but they also have like different categories or different pedigrees, if you want to say. So you have your Ivy and elite universities. So some of these schools that I put on the list, I thought were names that might be familiar to you, whether they're mostly in Pennsylvania or across the country. So your Ivies or elite universities would be like your Georgetowns, your University of Penns, your Browns, your Princetons, right? Your elite small universities would be like your Swarthmores, Haverford, Bucknell, Lafayette. So those are all in our area, but they're very hard to get into. They're very small. So they have less space than the other ones do. You have highly selective universities, University of Pitt, American, Syracuse. Highly selective, Gettysburg, Muhlenberg, Colorado College, Loyola College. Select private colleges, Hampton University, Seton Hall, Morehouse, Hofstra, Howard, Drexel. And then you have select publics, where we're talking about their main campuses. So you got Penn State, Georgia State, Bloomsburg, Old Dominion. So you have all different types of schools. So most people are trying to shoot all the way up here. These are the ones that are going to be more selective as far as that percentage. And again, it doesn't mean that you don't deserve to be there. Nowadays, more and more kids are filling out applications and there's still a little bit of spots. So that's what makes that selectivity number drop. You might want to start floating in this section right here. Highly selective small, select privates, because these schools are trying to get up to the top of the list. So there's this really cool book that I read. It's called, and I'll show it to you, Who Gets In and Why by Jeff Selingo. It's a year inside college admissions. And so I'm not just coming up with this on the top of my dome. It's pretty much in this book. And they talk a lot about how you guys should really start looking at some of these schools that might not be as selective as the ones at the top. Because when we talk about those rankings, these are the schools that are trying to get to the top. And so what they're going to do to get to the top, they're also going to offer you more money, especially you guys who have those high GPAs, those high test scores, so it can push up their rankings, their GPAs, their SAT averages, because when they're trying to get up on the list, the people who are putting that list together, that's what they're looking for. Also, a lot of these colleges, if they want to build some more buildings on campus, they have to try to get a loan from a bank. The bank will look at all of their stats, including their averages and their test scores and some other stuff. So they're trying to use you, so you use them right back. Okay, so that's why I want you guys to really just look a little bit more closely at those things. And we'll spend a special day on that one. Okay, so does anybody have any questions about that section? I got one more section and we're done. Anybody? And again, you have to unmute yourself. All right, the last section that I want you guys to look at. So all of this information that you're going through here, especially if you want to see if these schools are need-based schools or merit-based schools, and look at their graduation rates and all that kind of stuff, you can use these two websites that aren't giving out too much to students. So you have the U.S. Department of Education College Scorecard. So you're going to have a lot of sites that you go to that has some kind of app that you can do some comparisons. But just like Ms. Sai said earlier, some of those have ulterior motives. If it's a company that is a college planning company, they may be getting money from some college or some other people to push stuff up. Like if you go on Princeton Review, they're getting money from other schools. And so they may highlight other schools. This is from the government. So the government is not going to give any preferential treatment to anybody. So it's going to provide information to help you compare the different schools and links to resources on career planning, such as apprenticeships, career exploration, and training opportunities. The next site you can go to is the National Center for Education Statistics, the College Navigator. This is also not associated with any specific company. Okay, so this helps you build a list of schools to compare with each other. The site is very technical if you want to take a deep dive. And so you guys are those deep dive people. So I would highly recommend that you take some of these things. And that's why I wanted to give it to you over the summer before you go home for the summer, so that, well, you're already home, but leave for the summer, so that you can just take some time and check this stuff out and put together a more complete list for yourself. So no more than 6 to 12 schools. Try to fit it around 6 to 10. Don't try to take every piece of mail that somebody gives you that says that they want you, right? Again, they're trying to raise their stats. I don't want you spending so much time on all these other schools that don't matter to you, because you could be using that extra time to really put more time and dedication into the schools that are important to you and scholarship applications. And then 2, we want to put schools on your list that are maybe not as highly selective, that will give you some money so that you guys won't have all the stress at the end of the year. Okay. So those are some of the things that I wanted to talk to you about money. It's about strategy. And so we'll take some time and go into more specifics with these. So that's all I got for you today. So does anybody have any questions? I know we got really deep today. Y'all still there? I know you are. All right. So no questions. So if you guys can do me a favor real quick and drop in the chat something that you learned today that you did not know before today, or something that's helped you a lot kind of figure out the next step you want to do. And we're done. So you can either unmute yourself or drop it in the chat real quick. The rankings, okay. Oh, and by the way, here's that book. I have learned that the experience has changed a lot. Yep. And here's that book I was telling you about. I don't know if you can see it or not. Let me turn my little fancy thingy off here. Can y'all see that? There we go. It's a pretty thick book, but it's pretty good. More about how to get aid from colleges and scholarships in different places. Exactly. All right. So thank you guys for coming. Raise.me. Please fill out raise.me. Okay. So thank you guys for coming. And if you have any questions, you know how to find me, and I'll see you next week. All right.
Bye. Have a nice day.
Bye.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Bye.
Bye.